Another episode of Common Ground. Although we've had a bit of a gap, haven't we, mate? What's been going on?
I think we've had holidays and babies, haven't we? so,
I mean, I've been away. You're having the babies. How's that going?
it is going well now. I should say a big thank you to everybody who sent me messages and Emma messages over the last couple of weeks. It's been very much appreciated, and a big shout out to all of the doctors, nurses, midwives at Basildon Hospital, and particularly in the NICU unit, the neonatal intensive care unit, because they were really good for me and Emma and our little baby. So yeah, it's been good, but sleepless nights, bags around the eyes again. So there we go.
I can't imagine you struggle too much without sleep, though, because you've always been a bit of a workaholic, and I suppose a few kids in the mix, just stay in the park, right?
Well, three kids under the age of three is a challenge, or three and a half
Uh,
is a challenge. Yeah, I'm not a big sleeper, but even I in the last week, I have to say I've struggled a little bit. Where I thought, yeah, it'd be quite nice to actually have a night where you might get at least 3 hours continuous sleep. But I'm sure it will come at some point.
and you thought a good idea would be to get Common Ground off the ground this week. And, we're probably the only podcast in the country which talks about local politics in a proper way. And there is a hell of a lot that we need to talk about tonight with regards to Basildon Council, new Prime Minister, Farage versus Binface. I mean, I don't really know where it is we should start. But I guess we've been away on holiday, we've had fun there, you've had a baby, um, and now you're on the opposite side of the chamber at the back taking flack, and we've now got an intervention coming at Basildon Council, and I did take this from your Facebook page. Government to officially intervene on Basildon Council. I mean, I love ChatGPT because it always does that brush stroke at the bottom of an image, or like when it wants to highlight a word. So, it's good. But before we get into all of that, you're a lot of people around the council, Andy Barnes, Sam Junay, other politicians are saying this is a good thing because it's going to expose you for doing something wrong. But you've also been saying that this intervention is a good thing. So how do we balance that out?
Look, I think there's several parts to it, isn't there? Right. Number one is that I'm sorry if you can hear buzzing. I don't quite know what that buzzing is at the minute, but we'll fix that. The council has got itself into a bit of a weird situation, right? There's no doubt about that, and it has been on a path, I would say, towards intervention for probably the best part of the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And what I mean by that is the when you look at the council, particularly over the course of the last 12 months, we said on this podcast that in essence the council was going to be ungovernable, right? That we were going to end up in a third situation, which is where we've got to. The basic parts of that. So when you listen to Andy Barnes, when you listen to Sam Junay, they say, well, look, we've all got to come together, we've all got to do this and do that. But then for that to happen, there has to be what in political terms we would talk about conversations in the margins. There has to be reaching out behind the scenes. There has to be kind of what can we work together on? What can we not see? What are we going to struggle on, etc., etc. None of that is happening in Basildon, right? So take, for example, the different elements of this intervention. The first one, the major one, is about member behaviour and member conduct, right? And
Hmm.
this has been something that we have been raising with the government for the last 12 months. So this hasn't just happened in the last couple of weeks. And actually, what you read in the minister's letter is that since Genet and Barnes took control of the council, the trajectory has got worse, not better. That's what he's actually said in the minister's letter. And I
Could I,
think
could I, could I ask you a quick question there before you carry on? Is that when you said that the behaviour's got worse since Barnes and Janae took over the council, many people might say, well, Janae's turned a new leaf and he's now become, kumbaya, my lord, and trying to be everyone's mate. And
Mm.
I've seen that, and I have to be honest, I do find it quite funny for him to be mega, mega, mega aggressive, and then now being, we need order in the chamber. I do find that funny, but I guess in a way, um, you know, every single councillor is guilty of some sort of posturing, some sort of shouting across the chamber, some sort of insult. I mean, I've been there and I've heard it for myself in not every meeting. I don't come to every meeting because, believe it or not, I do have a life outside of politics. Um, but I've seen it for myself. Do you think that it's a little bit unfair to suggest that the behaviour's got worse since the May election?
No, I think that it is an insult to the intelligence of people across the Basildon borough to believe that Sam Genet has had a road to Damascus moment and is now a born again Christian sat up on the dais because he's wearing a frock and a necklace. He is the same individual who, behind the scenes, is a disruptive force, is incredibly aggressive on social media. There was a debate about a social media policy, and part of that social media policy was looking at moderating comments in the comment section. Some of the racism and the misogyny that is in the comment feeds of some of those guys, which we might talk about a little bit later on, is something I have never seen before. These vexatious, mendacious emergency council meetings, which is a complete abuse of procedure. Emergency council meetings are supposed to be exactly for that, emergencies. They're supposed to be for big policy announcements or whatever it might be. They are being abused at this moment in time to bring forward these kind of, let's all try and slap about former Labour councillors as a distraction tactic because they don't have anything positive to say. So on Sam and on what's going on in the council, I don't believe that things have got better. If you take, for example, one of the last full council meetings that we had, the meeting couldn't get past the announcement section for about half an hour. And that was for three main reasons, right? The first one was because Andy Barnes chose in his announcement to mislead the council into saying that I had signed off and agreed on the appointment of the monitoring officer, a man called Mark Greenberg, who is becoming more and more known to the public because he doesn't shut up in any of the meetings and he dictates and takes over. And in many cases, he chairs a lot of those meetings. That is completely false. I did not appoint Mark Greenberg, and for Andy Barnes to say in the council chamber that A, I did, and that B, he's seen emails to that effect, it is a lie, right? I haven't done that. So
Mm.
that was why that was called out. The second part of it was the chief executive made a speech at the last full council where, as Labour councillors, we had been asking the chief executive for the last 12 months to start calling out some of the behaviour that we were seeing from Sam Genet, from Phil Turner in the public gallery, because we could see it escalating. And in every single full council meeting, he refused to do it. And yet, in the first full council meeting under the Tories and Reform, he tried to dig out Labour councillors for our behaviour, which again is not acceptable, particularly when he doesn't reply to emails for weeks, sometimes months on end to what we're asking. And then the third element, which caused problems, was that Sam Genet continued to lie as the mayor of the meeting that Labour councillors had disrespected a minute's silence for Henry Novak. And he continued to promote that on social media, and he continued to promote that in a meeting. Now, the chief executive and the monitoring officer were both asked in advance of the meeting, because look, leopards don't change their spots, right? Genet's going to be a scumbag whether he's in that chair or not, right? And in that meeting, when he stood up there and he said that we had disrespected, we knew he was going to do that, which is why we had said to the chief executive and we had said to the monitoring officer, did you see any Labour councillor, any officer, any councillor of any political party, any member of the public gallery disrespect the Henry Novak minute silence? And the answer was no. So we said, will you correct the record then at the full council if that is raised? To which they said, well, we'll have to wait and see what the mayor says. And obviously, Genet does it and he says it. And then there's the furore in the council chamber because we're all saying to the chief exec, come on then. You've told us you know this is a lie. You've just got on the microphone. We couldn't shut you up for
Okay,
5
okay.
minutes. So,
So should the chief exec intervene on something like that because he's making an accusation? You've now called him a scumbag. Is it his responsibility to intervene on political discourse in that particular setting? I mean, could there be an email sent outside of council meetings to say, "Look, mate, let's relax on this one," or is it his role? Because as far as I'm concerned, I thought the chief exec was just the operational leader of the council, not the political one. So, just
but
for
that's
people watching who
fine.
don't know,
So that's fine if it's consistent. So if consistently the chief executive is not going to get involved and he's not going to correct the record and he's not going to intervene and he's not going to ask the mayor to stick to the facts. If that's the consistent way forward, then fine. But the stuff that Janae was saying about Henry Novak preceded a 5-minute speech from the chief executive doing the exact opposite, where he was intervening, calling out member behaviour and all this sort of stuff, right? So he can't have it both ways. And so what we
but
ended
can
up with.
can you though? Can you have
What
it
do you mean?
both ways? Because,
In what way?
well, I have to be honest, you're not exactly whiter than white in that chamber. And I think that's not my opinion. People can see that. You do like to get in the mix. You do like to shout across the room. So that's why I said at the beginning, the first question I asked you was, is it a bit unfair to say that it's gotten worse? Because
But
it
isn't
is,
that
as far as I'm
interesting?
concerned, and what the public will see, everyone's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, isn't it interesting that there was a video released? Someone turns up to every meeting to film the back of my head, and he released the video that he had filmed of the back of my head. And you're right. I think I said it on this podcast. Council chambers, it's not the morgue, right? You're allowed to sit in a council chamber and disagree. You're allowed to sit
Mm.
in a council chamber and across the chamber heckle, sledge, that kind of stuff. It's part and parcel of it. I enjoy it when I'm standing up speaking. If somebody starts sledging me while I'm doing it, if you're quick on your feet and you're able to react to it, then that's part and parcel of those kind of moments in politics. No one watches PMQs and expects there to be 650 MPs sat in perfect silence whilst Kemi Badenoch is questioning the Prime Minister. Right? It's nonsense. That doesn't happen in council chambers. But the video that was released of me shows me sat there in my chair, and I'm sitting there saying, "You're lying. That's not true."
Mm.
That tone. What you're saying isn't true, Andy. Come on, correct the record. Be truthful, Andy. Be truthful. I'm not shouting and screaming. I'm not gesticulating wildly across the
Yeah,
chamber.
but you've cherry picked one meeting, mate. You've cherry picked one
Yeah,
where
but the
you've where
point,
you've
my
where you've been
point there
polite.
is, but my point there is that's the one that's doing the rounds on social media about appalling behaviour. And then you have a meeting where the monitoring officer does something incredibly unprofessional in a standards meeting by then sitting there calling out my behaviour and saying that the leader of the Labour group is appalling and is shocking and is this, that, and the rest. And you think, hang on a fucking minute, mate. Where have you been for the last 12 months? Well, when you have a look at some of the nonsense that we've been going through, there's only one councillor been arrested at that council for stalking and harassment of officers and members, and it weren't me, and it weren't Andy Barnes, it was your mate in the frock. So
Can,
it
can,
comes
can, we-
back.
can we just clarify something there that whilst there was an arrest, there's no conviction. Just want to make that perfectly clear so that you don't get in
They're also
trouble for saying that.
it's a statement of fact that an individual was
Yeah,
arrested on
yeah, but
suspicion of
the
stalking
the
harassment.
implication is what I'm trying to avoid the trouble with there, mate.
It is also a statement of fact to say that he wasn't found to not have done it. They suspected that there was insufficient evidence, and the IOPC are currently investigating where his
No,
phone
no, no,
went
no, 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 no. Let's
during
let's
that
not let's not
that
go.
meeting.
Let's not descend into farce in the first 10 minutes, because
Well,
if there's no
let's,
evidence,
let's
there's
stick
no
to the
evidence. You
facts.
can't.
This is why I
That,
want an
well, that is
intervention.
the facts. You said there's no
This
evidence, so let's just
and
stick with that.
this is why I want the intervention, because again, the nonsense on social media, you find it like again this kind of honestly, it's like surprise, surprise, like somebody has walked through the kind of the smoke and they've come out as a different person. Like it's unbelievable. You can't on the one hand sit in a meeting and say we'll have some decorum in a meeting, and then on the other hand take to social media and say Labour have had their hand in the cookie jar and we're all bent and we're all corrupt and we're all this, that, and the rest of it. And you're sitting there thinking, it can't be the same bloke who then wants
But but but
respect.
but but this is what I'm saying about consistency here, right? Is that you have done the same in the past.
But
So yeah,
I'm not sitting there being holier than thou, Charlie. I'm not the one sitting there saying I want everybody to be on your, you must sit on your hands and you must be, if you want to heckle me while I'm making a speech, you can heckle me while I'm making a speech. I will stand there for my full 5 minutes and I will speak until such time as I'm interrupted again by the mayor, and then they move to silence me because they don't like my line of questioning, or they don't like my arguments that I'm making. And it strikes me as odd that all you lot on the right are all you kind of bastions of free speech and freedom of expression. But the minute a Labour councillor stands up to say, I think what you're doing is nonsense, and I think we shouldn't be spending £280,000 hiring political PAs, right? As soon as I get interrupting Councillor Callaghan, sit down, you're impugning. No, Councillor Callaghan's that's not right.
Look,
Councillor
I'm a free speech advocate. I want you to say what you've got to say because I think that you've been elected
So
to
your
be heard.
mates.
Listen, I'm your mate as well, so let's have it right. I'm not trying to pick a side here. I am right wing, but I'm all for free speech. So with that being said, there's a few people here that think that um, the council's being run by Barnes. Some people in the comments are saying they actually think that Barnes is being run by Journay. And obviously, this intervention will probably expose quite a lot of the facts around that. Um, I've got a question in the comments here for you in particular from Sam Smith. How do you feel your reputation slash status has changed since you were leader? If you can answer that, then we'll go on to what the BBC wrote about the government intervention.
I don't know. That's for other people to judge. I think that the current administration are very effective at distraction tactics. I think they are very
Mm,
effective at because they're not doing anything on regeneration, because they're not doing anything on any of the main policies. The borough is a real mess. It's an absolute state at the moment. The grass isn't being cut. The hedges are not being trimmed. Fly tipping is rising across the borough. The amount of money that's being given to charities, we now officially know, has been slashed from £500,000 down to £100,000. Because all of those things are happening or not happening, depending on what the case may be, what you find is that there's a lot of noise saying, actually, although the Labour vote went up, and although Labour were, I was seen as being a fairly decent-ish kind of council leader, albeit we lost the elections, let's try and trash it. Let's try and do all this. And there's another two parts to that intervention. One of which is around procurement and the way in which money is leaving the door. And of course,
mm,
what the Tories and Reform are trying to say is that it's an investigation into financial misconduct and all the rest of it. That is not what it says. Nowhere in any letter is that what it says. What we're looking at here is why why things like procurement, where if you live in a council house and you are in receipt of Morgan Sindall repairs, why are we paying subcontractors money to undertake jobs that never get done?
yeah.
There's loads of money flying out the door. Why are jobs being open and closed when they're not actually being properly looked after in terms of the quality or making sure that the job's been done? So it's when it comes to procurement, what they're particularly interested in is around contract management. Now, go back on every single one of the meetings, go back to the September 2024 scrutiny meetings. My party was the one sitting there saying the Morgan Sindall contract is a disgrace. The way in which this is being handled by the council is a disgrace. We need to stop this money flying out of the door where we're not getting value for money, where there is not governance around the contract. All of that is documented, and all of that is going to come out. And the other thing that the intervention is talking about is audits. So why has the council's books not been signed off? Now, again, if you look on social media, you could be forgiven for thinking that the auditor has a problem with me and my administration. The reality is that
Mm,
in May 2024, when we took over, the council had 4 years of outstanding audits where the books had not been signed off. Now, for 3 of those 4 years, the Conservatives led the council, not me. By the time I left office, we had that down to just 1 year outstanding. So we had got through 3 years of books and had them signed off by the auditors. There are
mm-hmm.
issues around things like member behaviour, outstanding complaints. So we have lots of members of the public making complaints about housing disrepairs and all that kind of stuff. That is all part of the audit. It's not just about the pounds and pence in the account. You have to look at all of the stuff around, are you meeting your regulatory deadlines? Are you responding to freedom of information requests within 21 days? All of that's part of the audit. You don't read about this on social media, and you're not hearing that from the administration. But they are the big issues. They are the problems when it comes to best value notices. So are the taxpayer getting best value if statutory deadlines are not being missed, if contracts are not being managed, if money is leaving to go out on procurement? Now, what, to kind of in a roundabout way get to Sam's point, what they've tried to portray is that myself and other councillors have used procurement to benefit ourselves financially. There is no evidence of that. There is zero evidence of that.
We're going to come on to that in a moment. I don't want to cut you off there, but I'll come on to the accusations of improper conduct in a moment. But all the things you've mentioned there about the way things are done, it's not done very well, about everything else. You were in charge for a while. I know that you've made the case internally for these things to be looked at. But what is it exactly that's stopping you from making progress as a political leader? Because if the problems are there for you internally within the council, with the officers, do any future politicians stand a chance at fixing those issues? Because it sounds to me like, and forgive me for using this language, I could be wrong, but it sounds like to me you're passing the buck from yourself as leader to people behind the scenes that are not elected and cannot be contacted to talk about this.
Do you remember when I said on one of these podcasts that when you're the leader of the council, your job is not to sit there and become the mouthpiece of the kind of status quo or the establishment. Your job is to be the public's voice in that building, fighting for the public and trying to make change and shake it up. So to give you an example, right, a council has to have 3 statutory officers, they're called. It has to have a chief exec, it has to have a chief finance officer, it has to have a chief legal officer. And then underneath those guys, you have to have directors who then manage heads of services, right? Now, the reason I'm saying all that and why it's important is because there has to be in a council, in any form of public office, there has to be a chain of command so that you know who is responsible, who is accountable, where do I go as a politician to ask for something to happen. Now, 3 days before the election, in May 2024, the former chief executive sacked all of the existing directors. When I walked in the door as the leader of the council on the 22nd of May 2024, I had 1 officer left, right? Now, some of our listeners might know some of the names. We had officers like Mandy Skeet, like Paul Brace, like Leslie O'Shea. These are people who between them had literally hundreds of years of institutional knowledge about Basildon and about Basildon Council. They had been literally man and boy grown up working for Basildon Council since the age of 16. I think Mandy Skeet had done 44 years at Basildon Council as an officer, right? That is such a huge amount of institutional knowledge to walk out of the door all together on day one. So when I and my cabinet turned up, we didn't have senior staff. Like Andy Barnes is walked through the door to a chief executive, to an executive director for housing, an executive director for finance, an executive director for strategy and partnerships, assistant directors all underneath them, and then he's got managers under them. I didn't have that. And so then what you find is you have to go through a recruitment process. So it takes 6 months to get the chief executive through the door. Then the chief executive has to get his restructure through the door. Then you have to, at that level, work 3 to 6 month notice periods. It took until January of this year before the new 151 was there, the new ED for housing was there, and the new ED for partnerships was there. So in the end, I had 4 months to work with those people. Not 24 months, I had 4 months. And I didn't have those staff. Now, as a councillor, and this is why the kind of reform attack falls down on us, you have no power as a councillor to go and procure somebody. I could not, and Andy Barnes can't, and before him, Andy Baggett could. We cannot go and say, right, we're giving a contract to you. Bosh. That's not how it works. We have no power to do. I could
So,
my
so do
my.
you have any say in? Do you have any say in that at all? Because I'm sure you probably get to vote on the procurement, right?
It depends on the threshold. So if it goes over a certain threshold, it has to come to cabinet, or if it goes over a certain threshold, it has to go to full council. So if for example, the collection of the council tax, the software for the collection of the council tax, is a
Mm.
multi-million-pound deal, right? With a, I don't even know, it's Civica or a Northgate or somebody like that. That would require a vote of councillors. But all that happens there is it's a cabinet report that comes with a recommendation from an officer under certain thresholds, and I will forget, so I'm not going to say them because I'll get it wrong. But whatever the thresholds are, the officers make those decisions, and every single day, officers are saying, right, okay, we're going to spend £5 on that, we're going to spend £10 on that. That is up to them, but it all is documented. So this idea that we can come in, who would I have even gone to? I didn't have any bloody officers working at the council, so it's not
And now
like
you've lost the chief executive. You told me that the chief executive has left Basildon Council last Thursday. Do you have any insight as to why he has left? Because it seems like everything around this administration, however short it's been so far, nothing is really working in the way that it should. I mean, to lose a chief executive in such quick time, there must be something going on that we're not privy to.
well, look, I thought it was disappointing that I found out that the chief executive of Basildon Council had resigned in the Municipal Journal, in the MJ, the local government press. I was not informed. I appointed the chief executive. I was not informed. None of the other group leaders were informed that he had resigned. We found out in the press. And then subsequently, a few sort of junior officers mentioned to me, did I think that he'd been pushed by the administration? To which I said, I don't know. I've had no indication or conversation. I mean, he hasn't been around. That is a statement of fact. He's not been around for about a month. We're not getting replies to emails. That kind of stuff is raised eyebrows and raised questions. So in some senses, it's perhaps not a surprise that he's gone. The timing of it is interesting. So the day that the government puts the council into intervention is the day that he resigns as well. Are those two things linked? I don't know.
Mm.
But I think it's really disappointing that the council finds itself in this situation. I think he has taken an awful lot of abuse from Phil Turner and Sam Genet over the course of the last 2 years. I think Kevin Blake as well has had some pot shots at him on social media, and that's disappointing, I'm sure. But if you're walking away with 200 grand a year in your bin, then you probably have to expect that there's a little bit of that as well. So he's moving on to a London borough, and I don't know what they're going to do because clearly the council is being abolished apparently in 18 months' time. So are we
Mm.
even going to get a new chief exec? Who's going to want to come and do that job for 18 months?
I mean,
Um,
could the council work without one for that period of time?
no, legally you have to appoint a head of paid service. So perhaps they could appoint another officer as the head of paid service, but it would be incredibly unusual for a council to not have a chief executive. What the government might do, because the council is now in intervention, the government may direct that the new chief executive of Thurrock has to also become the chief executive of Basildon.
Right, 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 right.
So that is within the gift of the new Secretary of State, whomever that is. I don't know yet, but
That would be
whomever
quite
the
interesting, wouldn't it? If Thurrock have their hands in Basildon already, I mean, it'd be very premature.
oh, listen, there's
You mentioned,
there's no doubt, Charlie. We've lost all of our upper hand now to Thurrock, all of our upper
yeah,
hand. But
yeah.
strategically, this is a really bad thing for local government reorganisation. 100%.
Hold that thought then, because I know you want to talk about LGR, and I think LGR is important. But the article that I've got on screen right now from Simon Deadman at the BBC, I want to read it out a little bit. Obviously, people watching the show can read along, or maybe they've read it already. The government has launched an investigation into serious cultural and governance concerns at Basildon Council. A best value notice has been issued amid evidence of deteriorating relationships between councillors and officers online and in council meetings. Now, we've discussed that already. Local government minister, maybe not anymore, Alison McGovern, because this article was written 4 days ago, and we've got a new Prime Minister now. So she may not remain as local government minister. But Alison McGovern said at the time that she would commission an independent review into the council to report by the end of October. That actually seems quite a long way away, to be honest with you. The move has been welcomed by the Conservatives, who run the council as a minority administration, and by Reform UK and Labour councillors. So all of you want this. The BVN states that there are concerns about member conduct and culture, and there has been significant instability in council leadership. Now, I don't buy into that one, because the way this council is made up, it's always someone coupling up with somebody else, and I don't think there's been that much instability as far as I can tell. But it does say that meetings have been fraught, become personal, and the government said there were significant audit and assurance concerns, including the backlog of accounts. So we know the culture's bad. We know that there's this element of pointing fingers. Things are abusive, I think. I think most people coming to council meetings and even seeing things online would agree that things are quite abusive. Is there a way back? Because you've got a long history with people in the Conservative Party, people like Phil Turner, people like Kevin Blake, Andrew Baggott. They've been around since I walked into the political scene in Basildon, and then we've got Sam Genet, who has become, the local brand new bulldog, as it were, for Reform UK, and has kind of led them to, well, you can make faces, but he's done well.
I'd go with
And
Pantomime Dame.
okay, I'll stick with Bulldog, because he's very aggressive, and I think a lot of this um, investigation will be centered around the relationship between you, him, and some members of the Conservative Party. I guess the question I want to ask you is, after the government has finished the investigation, will you accept the findings, no matter if they go against you or not? And do you think there's a way back to building more cordial relationships with other councillors inside that council chamber?
So look, on the first point, yes, obviously we will work with the government and we will work with whomever they appoint as their commissioners. I think they've announced who their commissioners are going to be. Actually, because of where we are and August being holiday season, this really has only got the month of September in order for them to do their work, and then they have to reply to government. The intervention lasts for a minimum of 12 months. It's indefinite, but is reviewed after 12 months. But yeah, we'll have a look at their findings. I think, from my point of view, one of the things that I will be making really abundantly clear is, normally what happens if you find yourselves with cultural or governance issues in a council, what then happens is you have to escalate that. So you would go to the monitoring officer or you would go to the chief executive. Neither of those avenues are available to Labour councillors. The monitoring officer and the chief executive have shown themselves that they're not prepared to work impartially. I will be honest about that. I mean, that's not me being controversial. The wording of what was said in a public meeting by the monitoring officer was not an impartial thing to say. He is pouring fuel on the fire at Basildon Council. There's no doubt about that. And he has to go as part of this whole process. That I think is clear. He's an interim. He's not a permanent member of staff. The council needs a permanent chief legal officer. And then the question I keep saying to the government, because I was asking for the intervention. I was the one on social media a week before they intervened, saying it's time for commissioners at Basildon Council because there isn't anywhere else to go. There are basics as well, Charlie. Right? To Joe Public watching, they won't necessarily care about. But like as a council, you're supposed to publish your agendas 7 days in advance. Right, so we have time to read them, and then we can get in touch with officers in advance of the meeting to be able to go to the meetings and then ask, our questions. These reports are coming out on the day of the meeting, so we haven't even read them. We have no time to go through them.
You've been accused of doing the same thing.
We did do the same thing, right? That is true, in the fact that the governance processes were not strong enough, and again. Go back through my emails, which will all be made available to the investigators. I was saying, I don't want to name her, but we lost the head of governance, right, at Basildon Council pretty well, about sort of 6 months into our administration, because of LGR, once LGR was announced that we were on the devolution priority program, a lot of officers said they wanted to go and work in bigger organisations to give themselves experience so they could apply for jobs in 2 years' time. Perfectly understandable and legitimate. When she left the council, we didn't really replace her. And as a consequence of that, we found ourselves in a lot of trouble. And I kept saying to the chief executive, we need a replacement in that governance area. I think one came in about 4 weeks before the election. So again, we lost so much of that time. So I think from that point of view, there is you're calling me out apparently, Charlie.
I mean, it is true. You did it with the Towngate, not the Towngate, the Eastgate purchase. You announced that the day before the election. So, you know,
no, that isn't true. We announced that that was down to go to the final cabinet meeting on the 19th of March. It then the monitoring officer decided he wanted more time to work on the report, so it got pushed back 2 weeks. But it was not the night before the election.
Did full council get more? Did anyone at the council get 7 days to look? The politicians, the councillors, did they get 7 days to look at that?
The first draft they would have. The second draft, which had minor tweaks in it, it was I think the day before the meeting. So there was 24 hours.
So
to look
that's what I'm calling you out on, because I think that's
listen,
fair.
People I think are finding this really strange online when I keep saying there were massive governance issues when I was leader. Like and I kept asking that, but I can't employ staff. As the leader of the council, I don't have the ability to go in and say, I want to employ a head of governance. That's the chief executive. That's the executive directors that sit underneath them. And if they are not in place because they've been recruited, but they're on a 6-month notice, and then they're going to come in and they want to have a say over who the new people is, you do lose time. And as they will be finding this themselves, the current administration. They will be finding that there are officers who are leaving the council, and it's going to take a chunk of time to replace them. And they might get people of the same quality and the same standard. They might get people that are not as good. They might find themselves bringing in someone much better, and they think they've won the lottery, right? I had that towards the end with one particular officer, and I thought, great, where have you been for the last 2 years? You'd be amazing at the council if we'd have had you the whole time. So you have those governance issues have existed for a long time. I would be amazed if there's
did you exploit them though?
Exploit them? I think we were probably more transparent in making clear that they were issued. There were things like standards complaints, Charlie, right? Of which I knew I was a subject of them. And I kept saying, we have to have standards committee meetings. You've got to get on with it. You've got to take these things. We can't have these clouds hanging over the council. And because there was such inaction, and because the people whose job it was as officers to get on and do those roles and do those jobs properly, because they didn't do that, we ended up in a situation where it was allowed to escalate. Now, what I think they will say to me is, well, you could have made changes at the statutory officer level quicker and sooner, right? Now, that might be a fair criticism of me, that I gave people the benefit of the doubt. Now, apparently I ran a dictatorship, but at the same time, I was giving officers the benefit of the doubt to be able to find their feet in their new roles, in their new jobs, to find their feet in the new borough that they were working in. But I don't look back at the last 2 years and think we're going to end up in a situation here where Gavin Callaghan is going to be hung, drawn and quartered by this investigation. Because the other thing to look at, right, this podcast has talked about it. I think going back to the Sam Smith question earlier on, we were doing good stuff. Basildon Council was doing good stuff. We fixed the bins. We turned the street lights on. We built 300 new council houses. We got £40 million of grant money out of central government. We were regenerating the town centre, £172 million of investment. The Basildon Town of Culture bid, whatever you think of that, right? It was done by my administration. All of the summer of sport and all of that kind of stuff was done by. We were delivering good stuff. So you can tarnish everything that we did over 2 years because Sam Genet and Andy Barnes have put stuff out. You ask me, do I think it's recoverable? The answer, mate, is I don't. And I have to be honest about that, because if I look at the abuse that my councillors have had to endure because of Sam and his acolytes. So, we talk about the public gallery, if you like, but the public gallery is not members of the public. The public gallery is a Reform UK Association branch meeting, right? And that's what it is. And you're sitting there and being abused and shouted at, and you've heard it, and the conspiracy theories and all
To
that.
be honest, I mean, yeah,
Me and Emma.
yeah, we'll get onto the public gallery because I find the public gallery quite interesting because I've been caught in the crossfires of just being present at a council meeting. I had an argument with somebody, um, in not at the council, just in public because I guess they don't like you and I'm associated with you and that was that. But um, one thing I would say though is like the broad comment about it's all Reform Association members. There was a girl there that I did meet who was not a Reform member. She actually supported the Conservatives, but she was also not really that much of a fan of you. And I think that well, what I want to ask you is because I think that maybe things have gotten worse since um, Sam Genet come along, but I don't want to level all the blame at him because I think that I'm a believer in personal responsibility. So I think if people come to the council chamber and they want to abuse you, abuse your wife, abuse other councillors of whatever political colour, they need to take responsibility for that themselves. But I guess it's interesting because I think when I got involved a long time ago, the council meetings they were always somewhat tense, but they never felt dangerous. And I think that when you've got people in the public gallery who are actually very aggressive, who will say things which are completely illegal, and there's no recourse for that. I do wonder what the point of being a politician is. There's a part of me which wonders, like, do you have to think about where it is that you go? And do you think that other councillors have to think about where they go in public because of the animosity towards you guys? But then also, is it you guys' fault or is it the public's fault? I mean, it's a tricky one because there's so many moving parts. But I don't want to just box Sam in as the cause of it all because I think that a lot of it is
Yeah,
down to
but
the public's reaction to the things that you guys say.
listen, right? 12 months ago, or not? Well, yeah, 12 months ago, our Basildon Council meetings were not like this.
They weren't. You're right.
And on a Tuesday night, Andy Barnes was coming to my charity football functions at the Sporting Village and playing football on a Tuesday night with us. Right? It wasn't like this. And Kevin Blake and I would speak probably on a weekly basis. Right? It wasn't like this. And whatever disagreements we might have in the council chamber, we left them in the council chamber. And if you were in the car park at the end of the meeting, you would have a chat. Sam has taken it to a new level where it's just about personal abuse, and it's just about how you tear people down. And let me just go back to the point that I was making around, is it recoverable? I can't ask my councillors to sit there and show respect to Sam Genet when he behaves the way that he does. So the racist abuse that Victoria Joseph has received on his page over the course of the last few weeks, where he is egging it on. Let's be really clear about it. He is egging it on. He is not deleting the comments. He is not calling it out. He's making some ludicrous claims about her giving him death threats and all the rest of it. He is putting her in real danger, right? She's a woman
I
of
want
color, the only
to?
woman. No, let me just finish this point, right? Because
Okay.
it's important around some of the other stuff. Where we sit in the council chamber, again, I'm constantly being told that I'm jumping up and down. Apparently, I've got to be a good boy for 2 meetings in order to sit where the opposition are supposed to sit. If you want the council to operate and function well, the opposition should sit where the opposition members should sit. I should be down on the front bench in the opposition seats that have always been the opposition seats for the last 25 years at Basildon Council. But I'm not. I'm shoved up the back right next to the public gallery in a mass discourtesy. I have more councillors. I have more votes in that chamber than Reform UK, and yet I am shoved up to the back in a massive discourtesy.
Mm.
I also think it's about showing your minerals and calling this stuff out. So, for example, in the last full council meeting, Emma, who was 9 months pregnant at the time, and myself were in receipt of death threats from 2 women who were sat behind me in the meeting. They're now subject to a police investigation. Andy Barnes knows that, and yet he described the public's behaviour as exceptional. Right? Call that out.
Mm.
Have the minerals to turn around and say, actually, do you know what? Don't go after a 9-month-old pregnant woman. Don't go after the leader of the opposition and threaten to shoot them and kill them in a council meeting. Like, that isn't acceptable.
Mm.
When one of your members is on social media abusing the chief executive or abusing Labour Council, call it out, like I did when I got rid of Ben Westwick. I didn't want to get rid of Ben. I love Ben, right? But as the leader, I know that what Ben did was not acceptable, and I got rid of him. I was able to stand up to it. As all of those officers who I speak to are saying to me, Andy Barnes is in office, but he is not in power.
Mm.
The whole council is run by Sam Genet and Reform UK. There is an expectation that the elections will be pushed back. There will be district elections next year, and that Reform UK will become the largest party, and Andy Barnes will be out of office, right? So he'll last a year. That is the expectation from those officers in the council. But if Andy was to show minerals, not in public, in private, saying, let's all have a kumbaya meeting in my office in private where there's no one there to look at it, stand up and call it out in the council.
Mm.
Tell the mayor that he's being outrageous by constantly shutting me up and telling me that I've got to leave the council chamber and all the rest of it. I will never walk out of the council chamber, no matter how many times the Tories and Reform try to silence me. It is never happening, right? That I am democratically elected to be in that chamber and to speak and vote on behalf of my residents. I am not walking out of that chamber. So I just think, you know what, Charlie, like, being a leader has to be about more than just a title on your business card, right? You've actually got to do it. So do I think that, you know, I could sit in a room with Sam Genet, have a conversation with him, walk out and have an agreement? No, I don't. Because I think you have a conversation with Sam and 3 hours later something goes on social media to blow something up, to make money on social media and for it all to be sensationalized. That's not how you should do politics, right? If you come to an agreement, you come to an agreement, and you should behave like it. These people can't be trusted. They can't behave.
Okay, well that answers that one then. So whatever happens, there's going to be no reconciliation. And to be honest with you, I've said this many times. I've said this to Sam. I've said this to you. I've said this to others. That I've never seen anything so aggressively toxic before. And I thought that when I was,
Don't forget, I was the one. Charlie. You were involved as well.
yeah,
I was the one saying that the will of the people has to be respected,
yeah,
and Sam should be the leader of the council.
yeah.
So that was my position. Have I been treated with any kind of respect when I was the one who was putting that forward? I'm being shunted off to the back of the chamber. I'm not allowed to speak. I've got a monitoring officer unprofessionally shouting me down in a meeting. Like, come on. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Is this the
at
game?
what point do I say?
Is this the game? You know, like if the roles were reversed and you'd had such a fractious 12 months and you remained leader and Sam remained or Sam was became the leader of the opposition, do you think you'd be as conciliatory as you're asking him to be towards you in his position now? I mean, I think that's a question to think about because not sure you would be.
Listen. I've led councils that are in no overall control, right? So I get that you've got to build alliances. Don't forget, me and Kerry Smith 10 years ago were knocking 7 bells out of each other politically in that council chamber, and we were not. You know, it wasn't kumbaya, all singing, all dancing, love and peace.
Look at you
I
now.
am prepared to work. I'm prepared to work with people if they've got Basildon's best interests at heart. But Sam, is that's not why these people got elected. And I really think people have to understand this. Reform are not interested in Basildon Council and the Basildon Borough doing well. What they want to do is burn the place down. And you know, I know that there is a Reform councillor, by the way, who on Friday night had a few jars in one of the pubs in Basildon because he bumped into one of my councillors, and he sat there and he said, that motion on Tuesday night that we're debating, we shouldn't be going anywhere near it.
What is the
That is not
motion
going to
so
improve
people know?
this motion about myself and Emma apparently on the take from a security firm at the council, right? and the Reform councillor telling the Labour councillor we shouldn't be going anywhere near it. This is a complete farce. It won't do anything to improve relations. We know it's not true, but this is all about
Okay, all right.
tarnishing
So
Gavin
so
Callaghan.
that's a convenient bit of hearsay from you, if you don't mind me saying so. Which councillor said it?
I'm not going to name the councillors because that would be unfair on the Labour councillor
So
that
hold on, hold on,
he's
hold on, hold on.
confided in.
So you're being taken to a meeting on Tuesday to talk about accusations of financial misconduct. Is that the right terminology to use in this instance, right? But you don't want to call out the
Is it?
person that you're hearing this information from.
No, because what I'm saying to you is that this individual from the Reform group is of the view that this is wrong and it shouldn't be happening. Right? That this isn't moving the borough forward, but there has been a decision by a majority of the Reform councillors that they want to press ahead with it. Yeah, we might get into this, right? But at what point are we going to get Reform councillors coming forward with policy? At what point are we going to sit in that council? You know, the only thing since they've been elected that Reform UK have put forward is this idea that we're going to spend £280,000 on hiring political assistants,
Where,
right?
where, where do I
And
apply
they
for
are
this?
getting
I'll have a go at this.
you and Aidan McGurran, my friend,
Yeah.
right? But
The irony
it
is, I probably work for
honestly,
you.
but no, what I want you to do is get the Reform one, so then you can feed me all the information.
Don't think that's going to work because I think they're watching right now, so I think my application's in the bin already.
Don't worry. Two and two together is not their strong suit. You'll be fine. But my point is that they've been battered for that policy. Oh, and they came up with a second one, which is at full council meetings, we're going to have biscuits and sandwiches paid by the taxpayer again,
I
right?
mean, I
So
think you guys are nitpicking on that. I mean, you've already got tea and coffee. I mean, fuck me. You're really going to complain about a few custard creams?
have a little look as whether or not you think people right now in this borough who are struggling with the cost of living, who see a councillor sat up there on £100,000 a year salary out
Yeah,
of
but the
taxpayer,
rest of you don't
just
get
ask
paid
them.
anything. So it's you're using one example. Most councillors get paid
But none of us asked for it.
six thousand
The
pounds
only
a
the only
year to
one who
do the
asked
job you do. Is that right? 6 grand, something like
the
that.
only the only one who asked for the sandwiches was the geezer on 100 grand.
I
So,
thought he was going to say
so
something else then, which would have been funnier. Let's before we go on to the financial side of being a politician, I want to talk about how councillors make money, what they do to get it, whether they should be able to make their money. On this particular subject, we had a few comments, and I know you'll appreciate some of this. So,
it's
yeah,
my mate.
yeah, that's it. So some when I put that post up
Iggy.
about Basildon Council being investigated, I mean, Chris Iggy Dodd is an interesting character. What happens to you? This is directed at me. What happens to you when it all comes out about how deep Callahan was in all this? Obviously, he wouldn't give you all the details, but you probably didn't ask. Might have been a smart move. People will remember how much support you put into Callahan. Obviously, nothing happens to me because we're not in business. I don't have any idea about what your finances are like, and why would I? Because he's accusing you of improper conduct in a council. I've never been elected to a council, so yeah, okay. I supported you, Gavin Callahan, in the local elections. I stand by that. I quite liked your plans for the town. Another character, Gavin Callahan, brown envelope man. I mean, you must get bored of this accusation, but my response here, if you want to read that with me, it just sums up the culture of political conversation in this borough. Because when I worked for the Conservatives, I was running campaigns. I was trying to get myself elected. I helped get quite a few others elected. But even during that campaign,
Chris Allen.
fuck off. Um, the issue is, yeah, you can get fucked on that one. Um, I had no financial gain from running in Basildon Council elections. I paid for my own. I didn't get any money from anybody to do that, but I was accused of taking brown envelopes, which is, I mean, I wish, because I'm the kind of guy that would take it. Um, Derek Fellows. Look. It goes to the conversation about Nigel Farage, and I don't want to digress, but if someone offers you £5 million, you ain't going to say no. So Derek Fellows, I agree, Charlie, but the operative word in your post is if. I really hope the investigation is a drains up analysis. So Derek Fellows was the former deputy mayor of the borough, and then the current mayor says, "Time for the truth to come out." Talking of the truth, should councillors be making money through social media? Now, you have made a few claims that a certain individual is making money from his social media. And we've had a discussion about this off camera, and I do wonder whether or not, upon reflection, this is a road worth travelling down. Just explain to people watching what your objection is to councillors making money through social media.
Well, look, let me just say on the accusations that were put on screen from Iggy and
Yeah.
the like, this is the problem with politics, right? In 2026, these are show trials. So replace financial misconduct with sexual misconduct. Replace sexual misconduct with fraud. Right? Whatever you want to do. Joe Public, a member of the public, can go on social media and they can say whatever they want now. So your man Mick there going on about brown envelopes, accusing me of corruption. I'd never met the geezer. He hasn't got any evidence. He hasn't got any. I mean, look, there he is in the Eiffel Tower in Paris with his arm around his missus, right, enjoying his life. Why he feels the need to talk about brown envelopes is because if anything good happens in Basildon, it is perceived to be too good to be true. So you regenerate the town centre, you must be bent. You must be corrupt. If you're regenerating that town centre, you must be at it. Rather than, actually, it's the right thing to do. We as councillors can get everything in place to be able to buy sites, land assembly, planning application, get it all through. So the Basildon Borough gets a benefit from it. But no, all of this stuff is just all about poisoning the well. What Iggy can't do is provide any evidence. What he has provided, he's done 2 + 2 = 87, right? But my issue with this, Charlie, is if you think that there is improper conduct, then there is a mechanism within the council to do it.
Yeah.
Right? That is a standard process. Calling full council meetings to put these vexatious claims in front of the public so that the conspiracy theorists can jump up and down on social media is not the way to conduct politics.
So the emergency meetings have been called by elected councillors. So I would say that is the process, right?
No, the process is if you think that there is anything improper, then you have to put a complaint into the monitoring officer, and it has to be viewed either by the standards board or referred to the police. So the monitoring officer has both of those options available to him for an investigation by the standards board or by because think of it like this, right? So say, for example, I mean, Labour, we're just not even bothering with these emergency council meetings now because they're just show trials, right? If we turned up at that meeting, I get 5 minutes. So you might have 10 minutes from the mover, you might have 5 or 6 speakers, so they get to speak for half an hour. I get 5 minutes in order to lay my defence, do I? In a show trial like that, that's not how it works. That's not natural.
So what are you being accused of as we're
works.
talking about these accusations? I mean, this all centres around this next section anyway about councillors making money. I mean, the start is through social media, but I guess we can go on to money in general because there are a few accusations being levelled against you, which I think you should have the right of reply to.
Yeah, and listen, if they do this in the proper way and they put in and they want a proper investigation, I will answer any question. I've been elected since I was 23 years old, Charlie. Right?
Yeah.
I've been around a little while. I'm not daft. I know how things work around register of interest, declarations of interest, all the rest of it. I have got no conflict at all. Chris Iggy Dodd is also on social media talking about how I was a councillor in 2022, 2023. I wasn't elected in 2022, 2023. I was, as Joe Public, I was as much able to go and do whatever I wanted out and about in the public as anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that if you want to have a proper investigation, have it, get all of the facts out there, and we'll do it. But why is it that it's becoming an emergency council meeting? Why are we doing it? The simple answer is this. If we have an emergency council meeting, if we can have sensationalized social media posts, the truth is about to come out. get people who've got nothing else to do, like Mick in Paris, salivating at home on social media about councillors being corrupt and bent, and I knew it, and it was all terrible. Then what happens to that councillor's post? What we now learn is that they're making money out of it. So how do I know this to be true and what you're about to read out to be wrong? In the standards committee a couple of weeks ago, the chief legal officer made clear that if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest, i.e., you are earning money out of social media, you must leave the chamber and not take part in the debate.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Genet and Andy Barnes got up and left the debate. So that tells you that they have a DPI, that they are making money out of social media. That's not me saying it. It's their actions in a council meeting telling you that. Now, I think Andy Barnes has been honest enough to say he is making money out of it. I have been honest enough to say I have made money out of social media. But the difference is, and you can make money if that's what you want to do, but you must declare it. So I have made it clear in my register of interests that I have a DPI in relation to if I go on GB News, I get paid to go on GB News. That's on my register of interest. It's not on Sam Genet's or anyone else's, by the way. But I get paid. I don't go on there
Maybe
as Gary
Sam didn't get
Callahan.
paid.
Maybe not, but
Look,
again,
I've worked in TV for a long time now. Sometimes they pay you, sometimes they don't. You have to renegotiate your stall to get them to pay you because despite how it looks, television companies are extremely tight with money. And if you don't have the right attitude with the right producer, you won't get paid. So it's not to say that everyone who goes on TV is getting paid. Good luck to you for getting the money, but some people just don't.
Well, look, that might be the case, but my point is that I declare everything. So my register is fully up to date. So it's on there that GB News commentator from time to time, and it's on there that it has gone to it doesn't have to be disclosed because it's an OPI as opposed to a DPI, but it's on my register with the monitoring officer and the legal team that I've done it. I think it was in May of this year that it started generating money. All of the money that I receive, I donate to charities in the borough through the charity football stuff that I do on a Tuesday evening, which if anybody wants to join in, get in touch because there's still slots available for that. So from my point of view, if you are open and honest about it, that's fine. But again, I think if people were aware that councillors were making money and actually the clickbait, the Piers Morgan sensationalism is making them money, I think they would question whether or not a lot of what is being said is in fact true, or is it just to bolster the bank balance?
Okay,
And I think
okay,
that the public should be given the right to make that argument.
that's a fair point. A fair question to ask. So, what I would say is this: in the age of social media, where everyone's got the attention span of a goldfish, is 5 seconds or bust, right? Most of the time. It doesn't mean that because there's a sensational post or headline or graphic or whatever it's going to be, it doesn't mean because it's sensational that it's not true. It could just be good writing.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
one of our mutual friends, Ada McGurran, used to be the editor of the Daily Mirror. I mean, it's a tabloid newspaper, so you know, if we're going to call a spade, let's call everything a spade. Now, because you've mentioned Sam, and you've mentioned that he
I don't
did.
think he makes money out of his social media, just to be clear.
No, but what I'm saying is that like when Aidan McGurran, not to bring him into this, but like when he was working as a journalist for a tabloid paper, his whole job was to make sensational headlines to sell the papers. That's the point of a tabloid paper. Now, Sam, I did ask
But it's
Sam.
regulated. They're journalists who are fully trained journalists. There's editorial judgment. It's
Okay,
regulated.
all right. So when
So
you put out a
always
leaflet, right? Who regulates that? No one.
the Labour Party.
Yeah, but come on. Like I've read them. We all know how to twist words. We've all seen each party do it. We know that there's half truths and you know misspeak all over every leaflet. There always is. There always has been. There probably always will
I'm not
be.
saying you can't have Yeah, but I'm not saying you can't have political spin, right? That's fine.
So
But
what's this then? If
ask your
what you're arguing against, this could be the same.
So listen. I'm not arguing that politicians should not be able to monetize content. That's not what I'm arguing, right? This is 2026. The genie is out of the bottle on this stuff, right? And it ain't going back in. And some politicians are very, very good at it, and others are not. And I know some politicians at the national level who use their social media to generate money to pay staff to enable them to be able to get their message out. Fine. I have no issue and no problem with that at all. My point is, you have to be honest about it. So you have to declare it. So I'm being accused left, right, and centre in these sensationalist EGMs that I haven't declared on my register of interest, some phantom, apparently, client that I had back in 2021
We
when I
can get
wasn't even
onto
a
that. We're
councillor.
going to get onto
Right?
that.
Yeah, but my point is, right, it becomes a question about whether or not, as a councillor, you have declared and been open and honest with the public. That is not happening in Basildon right now. And my point is this: if you knew that being more sensational, being more outlandish, being more outrageous, allowing your algorithm in your comment section to be more racist, to be more right wing, to be more left, hard left, whatever it is, if you knew that in your comment section your algorithm was boosted, if you were sharing your content to 170 different pages, right? It might just be that some people, the locals in Basildon, might just sit there and go, "Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think that's just, he's made a fiver out of that post.
Look,
I don't think that's right."
what I'll do, I want to talk about a few of the points that you've made because I think they're really important to go over. But I want to read what Sam sent to me earlier on today because I did want to give him a right of reply, and I would like to get him on this show for a conversation because I do get accused quite often of only talking to you, and we only talk to each other. And John O'Brien has put fourth interview now with Gav and zero with Sam Janae or Andy Barnes. I will have a conversation with both of those
It
guys
is
if they
our
want.
podcast.
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is. Yeah, but I think that people, because I suppose I ask most of the questions, I guess they probably think that I'm going to bring on whoever I like, and I'd like to. If Sam wants to come on, get in touch. We can negotiate that. So what Sam said to me today in response to the accusations that he makes money from social media, I'm going to read this verbatim. I do not care if politicians monetize their social media. Good luck to them. It wasn't a problem last year when the leader of the opposition used £9,700 of public money paid to a cabinet member's husband's business to create leaders' live streams that he then went on to generate an income from. My monetization option is switched off. If I decide to turn it back on at any point, that's my prerogative. But I certainly won't be taking any lectures from someone throwing stones in glass houses whilst he's getting the taxpayer to pay for it. End quote. So I think that's important that we gave Sam the opportunity to come back on that. Obviously, you've got a different perspective
With
because
more
you've
allegations and more conspiracy.
well, to be honest, there was money
Conspiracy.
there was money paid out, right? To
But apparently, according to Sam, for the last year, it's been for photos of me. Was it not?
I don't know the ins and outs of what Sam's accused you of, but look, we can be honest because it's look, you can be honest
But
right
this
now.
is highlighting the point.
No,
This is highlighting the
well,
point.
was Councillor
Sam can
Power's
put on social
husband's business
media.
paid money by the council?
Yes.
Right, so that's the point he's making. Now, the ins and outs of that is for
No, that isn't. No. But that isn't the point he's making. That isn't the point he's
clarify
making.
for us, please.
So for the last, this is a really good example of exactly what I'm talking about. So for the last 12 months, Sam Genet has put out that I spent £10,000, that I went to the council and forced the council to hire this individual to come in and take 10 grand's worth of pictures of me. So all throughout the election, everywhere that it's been going on, it's all been about Gavin Callaghan spent 10 grand on photographs. That was the line, right? To which I kept saying, that isn't true. That is not true. So, but no one asked the question. So what's the facts? What's the reality? So then we had an emergency council meeting, another emergency council meeting to launch an investigation into what happened there. And what they learned in that meeting was that actually all of their assumptions that they had been making were wrong, that a full and proper procurement process was followed, that the individual who was responsible for signing the checks for that company, they've just promoted her to be the head of comms. So they can't have that many concerns about the work that she did previously. What they now understand is that the streaming service was not just for me, it was for Basildon Council. So when you look at the interaction that Basildon Council now gets on its YouTube pages and on its the views that it gets of council meetings, the interaction with its public, the return on investment has been phenomenally high for the council.
Mm.
I don't mean to blow my own trumpet, Charlie, right? But I ran Facebook Lives back in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. I don't need much help when it comes to putting together Facebook Lives that engage with people
Okay.
and
Well,
have.
so what's the money
I
for?
think I had 27,000. I think I had 27,000 people. The money was for how the council was going to improve its streaming services. So, for example, you're sat in a full council meeting. Joe Public watching that on the council's YouTube page have no idea what we're voting on, have no idea what the amendment to a motion is. So it's all about how you put the graphics on the screen so that the public can engage with it, they could follow it more. So that's what we were doing. So you go back to the budget meeting in 2025, I think it was. All of those meetings where that stuff was being, and it proved to work. The public were engaging with those meetings. It had nothing to do with me. I never once, and this is a critical point, I never once went onto Facebook Live ever, when the council was either funding it through the streaming service, or the council was funding it through officers producing a briefing for me on all of the different things that were going on. If either of those two things happened, I never once mentioned any other political party. I never once praised the government. I never mentioned any. I was restricted essentially by PERDA rules around what I could and couldn't do on a council communication, right? There was one incident where there was a graphic that showed the facts of when the council's debt position was loaded up. And it showed who was in administration, the Conservatives, or who was in administration, Labour and UKIP. And that was a graphic that put up, and the Tories lost their shit over that
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
proved that actually the majority of the debt
Forgive
was
me, but
unloaded.
I feel like you're obfuscating.
I feel like I'm putting the facts across.
Yeah, but
So I
you're
feel like
telling me
this
the
is the problem.
practicalities of a live
It's
stream. I
not
don't think that's what people care about.
because it's not. It's because it's boring, isn't it? This isn't the
No,
sensationalized
no, I'm not.
crap
I'm
that
not
earns
trying to
money on social
sensationalize it.
media.
But what I'm saying to you is that
You're not, but
no, no.
Janae is.
What I'm trying to do
And
is
that's
look.
the point I'm making. The facts
I'm not
are
afraid of the
boring,
truth, and that's what I want to find out is the truth, right? If because look, at the end
but
of the
you won't
day,
make money on the truth.
yeah, well, I'm not trying to make money. I'm just trying to be honest.
Might as well be Sam's strapline. You won't make money on the truth.
Yes, but the point is that you've admitted here, it's on record, everybody knows it, that Councillor Power's husband was employed by the council to do some work, right?
Correct.
So when people
No
see,
one hid that.
no, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to say they hid it. What I'm trying to say is that with that being public knowledge, it does raise the question because of the culture of brown and not saying it's true culture, I'm just saying the accusation culture of brown envelopes, of dodgy deals, of X, Y, and Z, that having somebody related to a councillor being given work that he spent most of the time working with you on does raise questions that opposition parties are going to ask about. They're going to put them forward. And I think,
And they
to
are.
be fair, just let me finish. I think to be fair, if it was the other way around, you'd be hammering that nail too.
I think what you would do is seek to establish the facts, wouldn't you? So there are facts that have not been established, and the point I've made is that for over a year, apparently, it was all for photographs. It had nothing to do with streaming
You're splitting
services. Now
hairs.
it's all to do with the fact that no, but we're not splitting hairs because the point is, if you want the facts and you want to ask legitimate questions as an opposition member about how money is being spent by an administration, about the process that was being followed, go back to what I said at the very beginning of this podcast about the chain of command and where accountability lies and all the rest of it. All of that is important in a council. That is perfect. You are perfectly entitled to do that. I have no question. I have no problem with that. I don't know this, but I think Andy Barnes raised some legitimate questions last year in opposition that the council then answered. Fine, no problem at all with it. What I have a problem with is you taking half the fact Councillor Power's husband was procured by Basildon Council to come in and do some work, and then go off and say the money was to pay for something that was completely different. That
I don't think
the
that's the
procurement
problem.
process wasn't followed. No, but it is that the process wasn't followed. That Gavin Callahan's just fritting money away on this or that. That's not how it's supposed to work. If you want to ask legitimate questions, ask them. I will be honest with you, Charlie. I have asked a number of questions about Andrew Schrader, because Andrew Schrader is now in charge of the council's local plan. The Land Registry makes clear that in October 2024, the Schrader family earned £5.65 million from a land sale in the H1 allocation of the local plan. In planning, the test is not just a conflict of interest, it is a perceived conflict of interest. I am waiting to see whether or not, in the emerging local plan that Andrew Schrader is now responsible for, has he altered the H1 allocation? So has he reduced the number of houses in that allocation? Because if I was one of the developers, or one of the landowners, I should say, who wants to put forward my land there, I might come and say, I'm taking the council on now, I'm going to go to appeal and I'm going to have you, because that is a conflict of interest. And we as the taxpayer may be on the hook for hundreds of thousands, potentially even millions of pounds in appeal costs, right? So I have no problems. Now, most of those questions that I have asked, none of you know about it, because I've done it all as I should as a councillor, raised it with officers online, and I'll get answers. I've raised questions about licensing Connect,
So
the
you
firm that
haven't
Phil
mentioned
Turner
anything
is
about
part of.
Andrew Schrader outside of proper council
No, I have, because
channels.
I've tried to. I have tried. If the test now is that we're going to bring all of this to emergency council meetings, if that's where the monitoring officer, the legal officer, is saying what is acceptable, I tabled a motion to go to full council. Then the monitoring officer said we weren't allowed to bring it. Right, so we're allowed to bring this nonsense against Labour, but we weren't allowed to bring it against a member of the administration. But we're not giving up on that. We're going to keep. I genuinely believe that there is a conflict of interest here that could put the taxpayer at significant disadvantage financially. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds here, not £9,000. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of
So
pounds.
so
But
so you're
I will
minimising it.
continue to raise that.
You
I'm not minimising it. What I'm saying to you is that the council has to look at the scale, doesn't it? And
yeah.
as councillors, you have to look at the scale. If you take the fact that on social media over the last year, all Sam Janae has sensationalised this payment of £9,000, you would be forgiven to think that Joe Public thinks it might have been a £9 million payment that was going to bankrupt the council. But my question would be, how many times did you put out social media posts where you got the facts wrong? And how much money did you make out of that by getting the facts wrong and sensationalizing the post? Answer that
Well,
question.
he's for tonight's discussion, he's denied that he makes money. We have to put that out there, but you know,
He
he
also
has
he
denied
also
it.
denied that he also denied that he didn't pay his business rates, but the council took him to court to get an enforcement action for
Okay.
£7,500 against him for it.
Okay, all right, all
The
right.
guy just lies.
Point taken.
Like,
Point taken. But he has.
and he
But
walked out of the meeting 2 weeks ago,
well,
where
I was
he
going to
was
come
told
back
by
to
the
that. I
chief
was going
legal
to come
officer.
back to that. So he's saying that he doesn't make any money from it, but he walked out of a meeting which basically said that he had to walk out if he was getting money, right? So that's on record.
Mm.
The £9,700 paid. All right, look, the way I see it is this: you got to pay someone to do it, right? And if Mr. Power is the best man for the job, he should get it. But the problem is that people always make accusations against you personally about dodgy deals. So when you've got your council mate's husband being given the deal, I'm just saying it's a worthy question to ask, because I think politically you'd ask the same question in reverse, the same way you've asked the questions about Andrew Schrader. I think that's the same principle.
But and that's, we're not above accountability as councillors, right? And scrutiny, and that's fine. The thing that I'm trying to get across, that I hope people understand, is people can ask me any question they want. So on the issue of the streaming service as an example, the day that the council decided that they were going to move ahead with that, I had a meeting in my office with the head of procurement, with the legal team, making it perfectly clear that there was a conflict of interest. It all needs to be properly documented, and the council needs to do whatever the council needs to do in order to do it. And if you conclude that the answer to this is no, then you provide me with that advice.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I this is what I mean about show trials. We can sit here on podcasts, or we can have 5 minutes in a council meeting, or we can have a full proper investigation, and we can have, done through the standards committee, through the proper channels that the council has established, and all of the facts. Those officers can be interviewed to attest to the fact that in whatever it was, November, December 2024, that this meeting took place, because all of my diary was all kept and itemized, who was in the meetings, all that kind of stuff. All of that is available to be able to go through. And I sleep easy in my bed, Charlie, knowing that I have never taken a penny of money out of any contractor. I've never taken a penny of money out of any of these people. That any accusations to the contrary is a nonsense. I've never taken a brown envelope. I actually don't know any councillor that's ever taken a brown envelope from any political party. All of this, with however long, 20, 25 minutes us talking about this, it's the distraction from the fact that Reform and the Tories in their first 2 months have done fuck all. And that is the reality. This is a council going nowhere. So all they're going to do is throw mud, hope shit sticks, and hope no one notices that the grass is overgrown, the bushes haven't been cut back, the regeneration's stalling, and that the borough's moving backwards.
I'll give you that. I don't see much happening since they've taken over, so we can definitely agree on that point. I'd like to see more. I was hoping for more. Knowing the Conservative Party as I do in that group, I wasn't expecting too much, but maybe a glimmer of life would have been good. Um, Now, talking of procurement, I mean, I think that it's important that we discuss something else, which is another accusation of improper conduct, which I think you should be given the right of reply to. And I know we've been speaking about this for quite a time now, but I think it's important anyway. AIB security, there's accusations that you are on their creditors list through your company Beatas policy. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Did you get them a deal at the council because they were a client of yours? What's the truth about why you're on the creditors list? Why did they list your company and you as part of that liquidation process for their company?
So listen, as I've said, if the council wants to do an investigation, we'll do an investigation, and we'll put all of the facts out there for the councils to see, and for councillors to see, and everything else. I was not a councillor between June 2021 and May 2024. I was asked by the chief executive of that company, bearing in mind when you go back, right, and you look at this in more detail. In 2021, we had huge issues in Northlands Park with there was a death, there was a murder in Northlands Park. We had major issues as a council. And one of the initiatives that we came up with was to look at how we could do community safety wardens in our parks and public spaces. So the council went out and it brought in AIB security. Now, many residents will remember there were all their signs up about you could text this number if there was something going on, an anonymous number, and these security firms would turn up. In May 2021, I lost control of the council narrowly, 186 votes, story of my life. And then
Yeah, sorry about that.
in June 2021, Chris Allen was a great councillor.
The show's over. Get lost.
And in June 2021, I came off the council. They asked me, AIB, to look at a presentation that they were making when I was not a councillor, so sometime after I left the council, that they were doing to Basildon Council to go through their work and what they'd done. And I said to them, I'm happy to look at it because it was a really good scheme, but I don't want paying for it. So I could have earned money. I could have charged them. I was perfectly entitled to do that as a private business who's not a councillor with no register of interest. But I didn't do that. So they asked me for the equivalent of what my day rate was. I told them, but I said to them, I don't want paying for it. I'll have a look at it. Ironically, they went to that council meeting and it was Andy Baggott who actually appointed AIB Security and the Conservatives to conduct the or to carry on doing the work that they were doing in our parks and public spaces. That was the last time I ever spoke to AIB
Okay,
Security.
so with regards to Andy Bagger, yes, you are correct on that one because I remember how this whole process began. The process began because I believe I embarrassed the late David Harrison over a leaflet that he made I asked a public question at full council where he admitted that what's written on leaflets doesn't count for anything. It was a massive misspeak by him, and I remember that was related to my push to get park wardens into local parks. Now, obviously, decisions were made outside of me. I'm just a member of the public trying to do something well, do something right. So what I can say, what I remember of that scenario was that Andrew Baggett did procure AIB security. That is a fact. What question I've got for you now, and I think this really comes down to what I would consider to be a common sense question, and it might come across like an accusation, but it's not supposed to be. Who in their right mind would do work for free? I mean, you're on the creditors list of being given money £3,800. You know, most people
Well, no,
would
the reality is that you're on a creditors list because you didn't get paid. So
yeah,
there is that.
I
I
get
think was a
it.
bit lost on people as well.
But if there wasn't a deal on paper, if there wasn't a deal made, why would you be listed as receiving money at all?
I listen. Councillors get asked all of the time, particularly when you come off councils, you get asked all of the time to do various different things. That might be to chair meetings, to chair working dinners. You get asked to do all manner of different things, right? I have always maintained a rule that I won't do anything that's linked to the Basildon Borough, right? And that's always been my rule. I think my company we set up in 2017. It's always been my rule. So do I think that what the community safety wardens did for our parks and public spaces was a really good thing? Yes, I do.
Mm.
Have I been vindicated by that? By the fact that Northlands Park just last week was given green flag status, the first park in our borough to get green flag status, which was utterly unthinkable in 2021 when we were having murders and it was known as Murder Park in Northlands and all the rest of it. Yes, we were vindicated. That started the ball rolling on changing how Northlands Park was viewed. So therefore, from my point of view, did I want them to continue and to do a great job? Absolutely, I did. The question here is about when they came back onto Basildon Council. Now, I told the chief executive, because again, my register of interest and everything else, I was very clear to the chief executive that I had helped them by looking at their presentation for that meeting where Andy Baggett and Paul Brace had extended their contract. But I did not have anything to do with whether or not they were procured to undertake this work. So I did not have a declaration of interest. I did not have a register of interest. I have not received a penny of money from them. I did not know that we were on their creditors list. So that's not something that I can answer. But my point of view is if I had a disclosable interest, like I have done with GB News and Facebook and every other company that I'm involved with or I registered to, it is there on my register of interests. Is there any evidence in that council that either myself or Emma, because she's now named in this, which again is, she shouldn't really be named in this, but she's named in it. Is there any evidence whatsoever that we were involved in any way, shape, or form in putting pressure on the procurement? The answer to that is no. Is there any evidence that Andy Baggett was putting pressure on them to come back because he was the one who appointed them? Not that I believe, no. This was a decision made by community safety officers at the council. I am led to believe they went on a site visit to the AIB offices to see what they could do, to see what their technology was, and those officers thought it was good.
Okay,
And that's
so
why they
so
decided to
why
pilot that in the town centre.
why would
So
AIB
I can't,
come to
I
you?
can't answer. I can't, I can't answer. What do you mean? Say it again.
I said, why would AIB come to you? I mean, if I was looking for an in at a council
When?
for advice on putting their presentation in front of the council, you said they came to you and your
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
If they weren't looking
No, they
for,
came to me, not
well, it lists Beatas. That's what's in the insolvency
what.
paperwork. So,
What they've put on their insolvency paperwork is a question for them. But from my point of view, I had a conversation with the chief executive where he asked me to look at their presentation that they were doing. Now, clearly, because I believed in the project and I thought the project is a good thing to do, I said yes to that. That was in 2021 when I wasn't a councillor. So again, I come back to it. Sitting here
I'm not
now,
suggesting what you've done is wrong. I'm just trying to get to the truth of.
because it isn't.
I know, but I'm not saying it's wrong because if you're out of office and you've declared it upon coming back to office, I don't see what you've done wrong. But I think the question here is You're on the paperwork. You're not. Your company is. They've got a figure for you, and you're saying that you never saw the money, you didn't want the money, you did the work for free. But my first question is, well, they've come to you for a reason, right? Because you have political influence. You know what goes on behind the scenes because you're the council leader. You know who the officers are. You know how to make them tick and what's going to get a green tick in AIB's box, right? So they've come to you for a reason. And all I'm saying is that if it was me, and this was my company, I'd be like, right, well, yep, I'll take the 4 grand, 9 and 4 grand. I'll declare it, whatever. I know what makes it tick. I'm quite a transparent guy. If there's a few quid to be made, I'll put my hand up and ask to take it. I'm just going to keep it real. I don't care what anyone thinks about that. I'm an honest guy. If there's money on the table, I'm gonna pick it up. See it. So what I think people might be asking about you is, are you really going to tell us now that you gave them advice on how to get a deal with the council? You're on the insolvency paperwork for £3,800, and you didn't want the money.
Well, that is the case. And if I told you how many people in the 3 years that I wasn't on the council were asking me questions about how to get through the door at Basildon Council, and I didn't provide any paid consultancy. It is a role that I have that I will not be conflicted. We have other councillors who are serving councillors who run businesses right now that are fully declared and registered on their interest, where they do not take part in anything to do with Basildon Council. Do you lose money as a business because of that? Yes, you do. But is it the right thing to do? Yes, it is.
So why
So,
did
from my
why
point of
why did
view,
you give them advice in the first place then? If it's your rule not to, why did you bother?
it's my rule not to charge for advice. If I think that what they were trying to do is for the benefit of the borough, in which case the Northlands Park scheme that they came up with, absolutely, it is 100% the case that we thought, or I thought that that was the right thing to do because they should carry on doing the job that they were doing. So that's why we did it. But again, we would not provide paid consultancy to anybody doing anything in the Basildon Borough. And that is one of
Despite
those
being
things
listed.
where
I don't want to keep pressing you on this, but you're listed. I just want to I just find it hard to believe, that's all.
so well we were you tell me we're listed, but from our point of view, we have no idea why we're on that paperwork. Whether they've said that we've done paid consultancy for their own accountancy purposes, that's up to them. But from our point of view,
Okay.
has any money ever hit our bank account? No, is the
Okay.
answer to that question. And so from our point of view, I come back to it. People can legitimately ask these questions. I have no problem at all with scrutiny and with people asking questions about transparency. I know what I've done. I know what Emma has done. I know what the truth is, and I'm prepared to do it. What I'm not prepared to do is a show trial in a full council meeting. If you want to have a proper investigation, do it. But also to suggest that post 2024, that somehow I influence them getting a job or influence them being procured or taken on. Again, my challenge is produce your evidence that we did that, because it doesn't exist. And I know for a fact that we as a council, we use a whole range of different security services. Regency Security will be at the council tomorrow night. Who used to work for Regency Security? Reform's Darren Gardner, right? Are we sitting there saying Darren Gardner's on the take because Regency Security are manning the doors in the public gallery?
Ask the
No.
question.
But why? Like,
Oh,
Joe Public is not going to the complicated lives that our public are leading right now.
yeah.
They are not going to be sat there going, and you can't have it both ways, can you? You can't be sat there going, this is the be all and end all. We've got to look into, this, blah, 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 blah. But do you know what? Cakes, biscuits, and sandwiches. Don't worry about that. Right? Either you're going to apply the
I'm,
same thing to everybody,
I mean,
or you're not.
I really can't believe you've made your point about biscuits and ham sandwiches, mate. I really can't.
Wait till tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. I think we've gone over this quite a bit. I don't want to pull you over the coals any longer. I think I've given you a bit of a drubbing there, and you've done well to answer. I mean, Peter Kelly. You're making faces. I can tell you.
My point. Listen, I will answer any questions.
Yeah,
Like,
no, fair play to you.
this is what
I'm
makes
glad.
me laugh
Look. I'm glad that
about
you
social
have.
media.
I'm glad that you have answered the questions because, there's many people out there that will be asking these questions of you, and maybe they don't ask them in the right way. Facebook comments and accusations therein. But look, I've asked you. You've given me answers. It's up to the public to determine if they believe what you've said.
What what we'll do, what we'll do is we'll just clip that section up, stick it on Facebook, and I might earn a few quid out of it.
Well, do it because you owe me a pint. Anyway, Peter Kelly said, "Great questions, Charlie, but Gavin is answering brilliantly." I agree, you're doing well. Um, Sam
I agree,
Genet,
you're doing well.
oh, I think I'm doing great.
We should do this more.
We should every day. Sam Genet, the mayor of Basildon. The issue is, Charlie, the insolvency paperwork would only be issued to those they owe money to. It's a legal process. They wouldn't lie. We know who is. Sean Bradley here, excellent response, councillor, and it's just a way for a company to make accounts look more worse. We can get rid of more. It's a grammatical error there, Sean. Sorry, mate. Accounts look worse than ta. I'm the grammar. I'm a grammar Nazi. Sorry, guys. Um, than is typically. I can't even read now. Anyway, you can see what Sean has said. Um, before we get on to national
People
politics,
get annoyed at me when I correct your and you are on social media.
I mean that. Do
Like
you
these
know if you get like
clips.
if you get a leaflet through the door from pizza company, for example, and they can't spell pepperoni correctly, I can't trust that I'm going to get a decent pizza. I'm sorry, but I can't because every pizza is made with cheese and pepperoni. So if you can't spell, off. Um, right, let's talk about things that are going on locally, a little bit more personal, less political, because recently you've been sitting down with people in the public, you've been inviting them out for coffee, and you've been discussing things about their lives, which, maybe we don't pay too much attention to in the political world. It's all about, policy this and point scoring that. But when you get personal with people, what have you actually found out? And also, why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, it's been really interesting. So obviously, when you're the leader of the council, you're in the office and you're in the melee of it, and you've got meetings galore, and you kind of sometimes sit there thinking, I don't know if I've actually spoken to a member of the public for the last 2 weeks, because all I ever seem to do is speak to officers or to civil servants or whatever. So coming off the council as leader, I've obviously had more time on my hands. And one of the things that I've been playing over in my head since the election was, for all the noise and people slagging me off like Oliver Wright on social media about why you lost and all the rest of it and blah, blah, blah. We did do a lot of things. But I would argue we did some populist things, right? The
Mm,
bins, the street lights, those sorts of things, the grass cutting, the crunch services. But we also did some of the bigger structural things, 300 new council houses. We did the regeneration that was up and underway, the stuff that we were doing in Pitsea and Langdon as well. And so from my point of view, I was kind of left sitting there after the election saying, so despite doing all of that, why did we lose? Like, what is it that made people in a generationally high turnout come out and vote the way that they did? And for me, it has to be more than just the boat boys, and it has to be more than just being pissed off on a certain Thursday in May, right? There's got to be something else. So I put this thing out and I said, look, if people want to come and have a chat, I'm going to park myself at the top of the Orletto, or I'm going to go online if you want to do it virtually. Come and talk to me, and we'll have an hour, have a coffee, and I want to listen, and I want to hear what your life is like. I don't. It's not about coming to see me because you've necessarily got one little bit of casework because your fence has fallen down and blah 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 blah. There is a bit of that, but it's more about your day-to-day life. What is that like in Basildon? Like, what are the barriers? And do you know what? I think we've had 60 people that have booked in over the summer, which I didn't think we'd get six. So we've had 60 people book in, and it's so enriching, like as a counsellor, to listen to people opening up. People who have had so much grief in their life, loss of family members, mums and dads, or lost their children, or things like that, like who are living with real anguish and pain in their life. people who are fighting every single day with send children and grandchildren against the bureaucracy of the system, people who are, through no fault of their own, have overnight been given a medical diagnosis that has changed their life. Like do you know what I mean? Like, it's just incredible that they're going through this sort of stuff. And it just, as a counsellor and someone who's interested in, I used to work for Burnham, and obviously he's become Prime Minister today, interested in how the state is going to change and what this big structural change is that he's kind of, advocating with devolution and getting rid of powers and all that sort of stuff. You sit there and you listen to this and you understand that, there is so much complexity in Basildon families right now. And, I couple all of that with the Newtown utopia and the whole kind of vision of Basildon, and this thing about how Basildon was an experiment. And is that experiment working right now? Is it failing? Is there fundamental flaws that is stopping it being what it should be? And I don't get all too philosophical about it, but I do think politicians at times do need to take a step back and really think through what are the structural interventions that a council could be making. And honestly, Charlie, I'm only like 10 interviews into the 60 odd, but already you cannot conclude anything other than local government reorganisation is essential. And I know everyone wants to talk about the Thurrock debt and the merger and this, that, and the rest of it. But giving this place we live more power and more control over the lives of the people that are here, the disabled, the young, the elderly, the frail, the widowed, all of those, to be able to give them more agency and make interventions where they are needed the most. Local government reorganisation is such an important step to do it. And you never ever hear anybody, whether it's Reform at Essex or whether it's Barnes locally, you never ever hear them talking about outcomes. And honestly, when you listen to these stories that people have got and the way that they are living their lives, I come to realise, me changing your bins back to weekly, it does not change your life when you've got this much complexity in it. What will change your life is your local councillor having the power to get on with the HCPs, having the power to be able to say, do you know what? We're going to put another £1 million into training up more SENDCOs across all of these different councils across.
Can you explain
across
just
the
briefly
borough.
what an HCP is for people who don't know?
Yeah, so an education, care and health plan. So it's all about being able to make sure that a kid, whether they're in a primary school, secondary school, whatever setting they're in, how they're able to access the support they need in school, how they can access it through the National Health Service, and what their plan is going to be, how that's reviewed, what their needs are, how that can be met. It also has thrown up a lot around the fact that we don't, Burnham talked about this today, about how we need to care for people better. And a lot of that is around prevention. What I'm hearing loud and clear in this borough is the need for Sure Start centres to be revived and come back, so that schools are not acting as psychiatrists and psychologists and mental health counsellors and nutritionists and everything else, as well as English, maths and science and key stage 2, 3, whatever it is. So from that point of view, that's been really illuminating. But also around just having a council and counsellors that will listen. So many of these people, what's really interesting is the more of them you do, you kind of clock certain things. So like I'll clock that the other day, as an example, I spoke to one guy. I didn't speak for 35 minutes. I didn't say a word.
I know the feeling.
For 35 minutes. But do you know what I mean? It was like, they want to be listened to. They want to be heard. They want somebody who's then with a platform going to be able to go away and think about what are the changes that we can really make. So I honestly, I think they are, most of these challenges are beyond the control of a district council. That is true, right? I would not try and pretend that I could wave a magic wand and fix everything that these guys and girls are going through. But I certainly think that we will be, or I will be a better counsellor at the end of this summer because of these conversations. and I understand. And my plea to people is to just be a bit kinder. Like, you have no idea what is going on behind the front door of a lot of these people, and there's too many things happening in such close proximity for it to be coincidence. It's structural, and the loss of community is something that everybody talks about. The
Mm,
fact that, whether you are 28 years old or you're 68 years old, that feeling that Basildon was a great community. Everyone says they love Basildon. Everybody says it's misunderstood. Everybody is proud to be from Basildon. They're not proud of Basildon right now, and that's
okay.
what they're really hoping for.
I know that
But
I know
it's been
from
a worthwhile.
from what I'm gathering from what you've told me tonight, it's like people just want more understanding, more empathy, uh, more feeling of being seen in a way. Because I think that you can kind of get lost in the hubbub of life. I've got a bill to pay, I've got a child to get from school, I've got a doctor's appointment, my mum's not well, my dog's been sick all over the sofa, whatever the case may be. And life is like that sometimes. It's not, as we see it on social media where it's, holidays and restaurants and everything else that people like to promote of their lives. Sometimes it's difficult. And I think that, it's nice of you to go and do this because I think a lot of the time people assume, probably wrongly actually, because I know a lot of nice politicians, but I think they think that politicians are just self-serving and they want what's best for them only, and it's just a race to the top, and everyone else can slide off down to the bottom. And I think it's interesting because one thing I would say about community is that me personally, I'm a very sociable man, so I will always make an effort to talk to people. I talk to strangers, I talk to people on the train, I talk to people as I'm having a coffee. I know all of my neighbours, which is rare. Most
You're
people,
that.
what's that, mate?
You're that guy.
Look, yeah, I'm that guy. Nowadays you go on a train, everyone can attest to this. You get on a train, and everybody is headphones in, this on the train the whole way. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a whole world that you're missing. I know you're on a train. I know it sounds a bit whimsical me saying that, but like when I notice somebody on the train who doesn't have a phone in their hand and doesn't have headphones in, I'll make eye contact and I'll say, "How you doing?" And the amount of conversations that I've had just by doing that is amazing. People that I've met told me some of their stories in a half an hour train journey, and it gives you so much more perspective that I think most people are kind of afraid to speak to strangers, and I think that's kind of sad. And I think that if we just go out and speak to one another and actually say, how are you, whenever I see you, I don't start off by saying, oh mate, that council, what a fucking palaver. The first thing I always ask you is, how's Emma, how's the kids? And I think
Mm.
that's what's missing. Back in the day, you and I didn't see eye to eye on political matters, and I dare say we still don't. But we get along because it doesn't have to be knives and, daggers. It can just be, how's everything going? And I think
But
that's what's missing. I think it's good that you do this.
yeah, listen, I agree. I think it's about motivation, isn't it? Again, like, so I think in the last 2 or 3 years, there is not a councillor in Basildon that's done more casework than I have, right? So most councillors will do probably between 80 and 140 bits of casework a year. I do over 2,000. And I don't say that to brag. I say it because I try and do the job. I try and get through the inbox. I try and do as much as I can. Similarly, I used to do those meet the leader things. But when you do those meet the leader things, there's also a bit of pretense and there's also a bit of apprehension. So people turn up, is in a town hall kind of setting. Not everybody wants to put their hand up and air everything that's going on, and they're conscious that neighbours might be sat behind them and whatever. So doing this has been really illuminating, and I would encourage more councillors to do it, and to really um, understand what's going on, because people see the Facebook, and don't get me wrong, every day you put the Facebook posts out, and we've got there's some nonsense that the council's been up to, which we're going to put out tomorrow, which is going to undermine a lot of the arguments that they're going to make at their full council meeting. That's part of what you've got to do in opposition. The thing I would say about that,
I hope it's not sensational, Gavin.
wouldn't dare be sensational, Charlie.
Mm.
It's always fact with me. As much as people don't like it, it is always fact. Um, but
uh,
but my point is that like Basildon at the moment is is on a bit of a knife edge, isn't it? Right, the politics is all over the place. People, I think, are feeling a bit of buyer's remorse about the fact that the regeneration clearly is stalling and it is over, and that is not a nice feeling for a lot of people. Visually, the borough looks a mess, and that is not a nice feeling for people. Um, and we've got we have got a responsibility as councillors to hold them to account. But from my point of view, I have a responsibility to get the Tories out because every time they're in, this is what happens to Basildon. And so I'm going to keep pushing as much as I can to make sure that we get that outcome. I would just say, Charlie, right, and people can love this or hate this. No one wants to be in this situation. No one wants the council to be operating like this. No, that feeling you get when you're walking into the council chamber thinking, right, okay, got to put your war face on now because you're about to go and have fucking daggers from behind and you got this and you got that. No one wants that. You want to be able to go in there, stand up, make a 5-minute speech, tell them they're crap and they're wrong, them stand up, make another one and say, you're crap, you're wrong, and everyone go, well, who's got the votes? Do you know what I mean? That's how a council should operate and work. And at the end of it, we might have moved the borough a little bit further along than when we got elected and when we found it. The way it all is at the moment, nobody would want it, but there would have to be fundamental changes for it to be different. And I just don't think, looking at Andy Barnes, he's got the minerals to be able to do that.
why don't you start the process then?
I have.
Why don't you why don't you walk into the council and shake Andy Barnes' hand,
Yeah,
shake Sam Genet's hand,
yeah,
maybe get all the councillors in line, do the conga, and we'll see how
yeah.
you get on. Yeah, what do you reckon? I mean, some of them might fall over whilst trying to attempt the conga, naming no names, but some are quite unstable. But there we are.
I would, but Sam's already got there with the conga because there's this procession that has to come in now where everyone stands up and sycophantically nods their head at the civic.
Does the trumpets you get like the king's
This is
entrance?
how crap, but this is how rubbish it is. In some councils, they've got the fucking mace and they've got the top hat and all the frills and all
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
then someone comes and rings a bell and everyone stands up and you're like, ooh. Basildon, you've got someone at the back going, could you stand up, please? Because the mayor's coming, and everyone's like, what the fuck? It's just
Yeah.
honestly, it's just do it right or don't do it at all, really. But
Mm.
it's where we
Well,
are.
talking of pageantry, should we get on to this particular story right now before we close out? I did want to add a conversation about Nigel and the bin, but maybe we could talk about that on another episode. But as everyone should know, Andy Burnham has been appointed Prime Minister by King Charles. You know Andy Burnham. I don't know how well you know him, but you also know Keir Starmer, and I don't know how well you know him. So, of the two men, um, are you sad to see Starmer go and Burnham walk in, or do you see positives on both sides?
Well, I voted for Burnham twice to be the leader of the Labour Party in 2010 and 2015. So it probably won't come as a massive surprise to people that I was delighted that Andy Burnham is the Prime Minister today. Listen, Keir is a really good guy, and his heart is in the right place, brain the size of a planet, all those good stuff. But we are just living in deeply political times, and you have to be a politician. And unfortunately for Keir, he perhaps was too cautious in his approach, and we all found, I thought it was really interesting that I think it was YouGov did a poll. It might have been YouGov, it might have been someone else, Ipsos or somebody, did a poll about asking the public. So what was it you really actually hated about Keir Starmer? What was it that he did that you really didn't like? And basically, like everything got about like 4%. Ultimately, it was like they just didn't like the fact that Keir Starmer was being Keir Starmer, and it was one of those really odd polls where you're like you can't put your finger on it. But with Andy, I think look, there is a step. Like, even what he did today, coming to Downing Street, no podium, no frills,
Hmm.
no notes, no lectern. He's just going to stand there and he's going to speak. You know, he's a conviction politician. He believes in what he believes. He has been talking about what he believes for the last 20 years. He's made it work on a pretty big scale in Manchester. It's the only part of the UK that's got growth over the last few years, and he wants to put that model of politics to the country. As I said, I think he was right, and you know, people listening to this might attest to some of the stuff that he said about this generation of politician has failed and is not doing a good job, and we've got to up our game. I would agree with that, right? You see that locally.
Should we play a clip of Andy speaking about this now?
Yeah, do it.
I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government.
There he is. We got there in the end. Bit of a delay there.
In doing so, I am acutely conscious that I am the 6th person in the last 10 years to walk up this street, the 7th Prime Minister since 2016, making this a moment for reflection and new resolution. It requires my generation of politicians to raise our game and rise to the new challenge. Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again. And that is our challenge, to make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
I mean, good delivery, obviously very
right?
rehearsed. You hear me? Have you lost me? I can hear you.
This is the best bit of the whole show.
Right, well, I can hear you. Let's go.
Try to play a video. Try to be too clever.
Oh, wow. Are we back?
We should have spent £9,700 on a streaming service.
Right, I don't know if this is coming back or not. I've got no idea if this is coming back, but there we are. Ah, okay.
If you are still with us, you have listened to Andy Burnham 4 times talking about the fact that he's just come from Buckingham Palace to the steps of Downing Street. We will probably come back to Andy Burnham. I think we'll do another show where we talk about Burnham once we know the full details of his cabinet and we know what's happening for local government. We can come back and have another conversation. It's just gone 11 o'clock, so we've been on for 2 hours. You've listened to our dulcet tones talking about all things Basildon politics. If you are a sucker for punishment, then there is another Basildon Full Council meeting tomorrow evening, so you can join whatever time that starts after the emergency council meeting. You'll be able to join that as well. But wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Charlie Boy, for all your tough questions, and for the silence that we're now having to endure. Thank you all. We'll see you all again next time.